Let's break into it today. Today is going to be interesting because I'm going to have Jesse on from Apex Crypto Consulting, and we're going to get into a little bit more around the idea of the reset. And what does that mean? Because there are so many people that are looking at where CBDCs could be going, and this is in reference to what's happening in Europe, but also around the world. I mean, you got to look at the digital yuan and also with the United States. Is that another inflection point that we're going to be dealing with on all of that? Before we get into that, I do want to jump in and, of course, thank our sponsors and our partners over at XRP Vegas. Of course, you guys know what's happening out there. If you have not already registered for this event, I want you to do that now. Just jump over to xrplasvegas.com. You can get over there and
Take a minute,
register
guys,
for
and
this
just
event
invite
that's
you to
22
join
days,
the
12
Baron Market
hours
Edge
away,
private member
and it
group.
is
You
going to
guys
be
can
a
do that
burner. A
by just
lot of
clicking the link
amazing
down in our
speakers
description.
that
This
will
is
be
your
there.
insider's
We will
edge
have a media
to the
desk
AI and
there. We're
crypto
going to be
money
covering a lot
revolution,
of
which
what's
is what
happening.
we really
And of
focus
course, our
on
friends
here
over
on
at
PDN.
XRP Las Vegas
This
will
is
be
additional
killing
research
it for
that I
sure. We'll
do
have,
along
of
with
course,
our
Christian
team. We have a
Carlo,
pretty significant
Brad
team on our
Garlinghouse,
research
Ashish
around
Burla,
not only what
with
guides our
Everbear,
episodes,
all
but a
sorts
lot of that
of things
research
happening.
gets
They've got a
built
special
into
thing
more
going
content
on
that I
with the
drop
EZA
here on the
guys
Baron Market
around
Edge.
kind of a
We
Shark
do
Tank
market trends and
concept. So
sentiment
check it
analysis,
out, just
which can be anything from tokens to all
xrplasvegas.com,
sorts of
and you guys
strategies.
can
This, of
join
course,
in on
will
the
also
fun on
guide
all of
you
that.
over to our
Are you
Telegram
going
group,
to
and we
jump
give
over
this as
to
elite
a
community access.
video
You get bonus
that
content over there,
I
including
did a
tax
breakdown on,
guides,
and it's a very
as
long
well
video. If you
as
guys
different kinds of asset
don't know
guides
Stephen
out there that we
Bartlett,
drop
he is
all the
I
time.
think one of the better
This is your
podcasters out there,
10-year
and it's
vision in
a
action.
show
All you
called
have to
The
do, of
Diary of a
course, is just
CEO.
hit that little
And I'm sure you've
subscribe
probably
button
seen
or
it,
join the community
in terms
and
of the
get in on it.
podcast,
It's
but he
absolutely
ran
free. It doesn't
across
cost
a
you a
very
thing. So check it
interesting
out.
statement around a comparison to the 2008 financial crash. Okay, this is an economist who predicted that. Now, I think there was a lot of guys that were on the front end of that. But Steve Keen is the guy. He's Professor Steve Keen. And I've listened to this. Now, you could, and when I play this, I want you to kind of be aware that whether you are a Trump supporter or a Trump detractor, doesn't really matter. I think this guy is anti-administration, mainly for what's going on in Iran. Before I bring on Jesse, I want to play this for you guys because it will give you a little bit of an insight that I think is going to change your opinion on what is happening. Let me jump over here and share this with you guys, and I'll play the video for you. Let's go over here and play this right here. Here we go.
So there are 5 scenarios in which the war could end because Trump is stupid enough to take on what Israel wanted to do, which was destroy Iran, but they've bitten off far more than they can chew. So scenario 1 is Iran destroys the Gulf power infrastructure. I think that's highly likely. And if that happens, then Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Dubai, they'll become uninhabitable. And then scenario 2, Iran disables Israel's nukes. I hope that happens, but there's this one, and it scares the shit out of me.
Professor Steve, I have so many questions. What is going on?
So this war is threatening everybody on the planet. And what Trump is doing at the moment is a pump and dump scheme. He's trying to drive up the oil price and exploiting it for his friends and for his own wealth in the process. So people are focusing upon the price of this. But the really important point is this is Strait of Hormuz. So oil, fertilizer, helium, all have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz.
And Iran have blocked that gap.
So they can say you do or do not pass, depending on what your country's attitude towards our country. So that's quite terrifying because 20 to 30% of our fertilizer comes through this point. But if this is not available, the globe has a famine.
Do you think he will send ground troops in?
Yes, I do, but I'd hate to be one of those troops because it's a suicide mission. They've got underground military units of weapons and troops, but we have no idea of the scale.
Trump keeps saying that the war has been won.
Yeah.
What's going on there in your view?
I think he's been fed propaganda to tell him that he's winning the war by his immediate advisors because you cannot tell a person like that they've made a mistake.
We'll talk about that as well. But you've developed a bit of a reputation because you're very good at predicting things. So which of these 5 outcomes do you think is most...
All right, so there it was, 5 outcomes that this particular analyst is looking at. And one of the things that you have to consider is, what is the financial system going to look like, a post-US-Iran conflict? I want to bring in, of course, Jesse from Apex Crypto Insights. Jesse, great to see you, man. How are you?
Doing great, Paul. How are you?
So it's a little dystopian if you listen to what Stephen Bartlett was interviewing Keen about. But the point I wanted to make to the viewers and listeners is that this is maybe a bigger deal around resetting the global economy and getting into a new financial order than it is about something that's going on in the Middle East. Even though I think the GCC countries are going to probably have one of the bigger impacts of this. When you look at the current infrastructure of what WEF has been somewhat telling us they're going to do around a global reset, what are the key things that you think has to happen? You've been studying this for a very long time. Where does this shift actually start and begin?
Okay. Well, first, if you don't mind me adding, I don't hold the same opinion as that guy that was being interviewed at all in regards to why Trump is there, and his
Okay,
quote.
well, give us that.
Like,
What do you think it
well,
is?
that regime should have been eliminated a long time ago. I mean, they've been financing all the terrorism all over the world.
Definitely the
It's
bad
unreal.
guys, for
Uh,
sure.
I mean, come on. I I have a hard time watching him and just not cringing. Like to me, it's so off.
So do you think that with the fact that we've seen so much in terms of energy prices spiking, and we're not out of this yet, it's still very possible we could see ground troops go in. But if any of this starts to really continue to, because from what analysts that I've talked to, both pro and against Trump, they're saying that even if Trump gets out of this really well, that the lagging effects of what's going to happen in the strait around energy, food supply, fertilizer. He was talking about helium, all sorts of things that are needed in terms of chip production and things like that is going to have a lagging effect. And that could push economies into, a potential financial reset, which means CBDCs. It means much more strict control on your population. And it also goes into the thing that we've been talking about here on this show with you is where is the IMF in all of this? And what role do they play if something like that were to occur? So spill it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, like first off, they need to be eliminated. Okay, like they should have been eliminated a long time. This regime, long time ago. They finance all the terrorism. They use children as suicide bombers. Like he's not going to
Terrible.
tell you that part, right? So there's a million reasons he didn't mention. The real reasons why they need to be taken out. And so that's just what I want to make sure that I'm clear in my opinion about that.
Mhm,
But I think the one like the new global reset that you're talking about,
mhm.
the CBDCs, that's going to happen regardless of this whole Iran situation
Right.
because it's been planned for a very very long time
Mhm.
by the IMF and by the powers that be. And I think it has to do because it's a global liquidity crisis, a global debt crisis, and it has to again to do with the Bretton Woods. The original Bretton Woods, the way they structured it in 1945,
Yep.
it did not work. A sovereign currency cannot serve as a global reserve currency forever because of the Triffin's dilemma. So in 1968, they create the special drawing rights of the IMF to help as a supplementary reserve asset to the US dollar to help with global liquidity, global trade, and FX to help
Yeah.
the FX market, because it's a mess when you're trying to settle with just one currency
Right.
and to fix the Triffin's dilemma. But they did not succeed. The special drawing rights never gained adoption. It never got that liquidity and the use cases required to serve as a supplementary reserve asset. And so when The Economist magazine comes out in 1988 and says, get ready for a new world currency, and it talks about how the IMF they'll do that in 30 years, which would bring us to 2018 when we see
Ex
XRP getting Ripple net adoption.
exactly.
The article, in a very subtle way, on the Economist magazine, argued that the IMF would be the best institution to manage that currency because of their role and experience in the SDR. See, the SDR never got liquidity because the central banks kind of kept going with the US dollar because it was more liquid. So it failed. It failed to serve as a supplementary reserve asset. So, and that's considered the Bretton Woods 2. Now, at the time, it was not called the Bretton Woods 2, but that's what it's referred at as a Bretton Woods 2 by most central bankers and people who write about it,
Right. Mhm.
although it was not called that at the time. The new Bretton Woods they're creating now is the Bretton Woods 3 or the digital Bretton Woods. And so that's how I see because you need the countries do not it's the Triffin's dilemma is that the whole world cannot be forced to hold a currency of a certain nation to do their trade. It just
Exactly.
creates a big mess. So that's what they're trying to fix. But what's very interesting about that, Paul, is that I've done a lot of deep dives on this explaining and I kind of cracked the code there. But one thing I had forgot to research was what is the structure of the IMF? Because in our last conversation, I didn't know what I know now, but the actual share, the structure of the IMF, like its shares, like who owns the IMF, and really, it's all the countries that the majority of the countries own the IMF, and literally, it's they own it in quotas, which are technically measured in SDRs. And what's
Right.
very interesting is the U.S. The U.S. is the biggest quota holder of the SDR. So technically, the U.S. is the biggest owner of the IMF. So all that to say, Paul, is that I realize like this is another reason why all the countries could agree on the XRP being the new SDR because all the countries own it, and especially the US, they're the biggest holder. So because Miguel Villas said when he was at Ripple, he said, I kind of see us maybe as a lender of last resort when he was asked about the escrow.
Yeah. Mhm.
And we could give it off, we could maybe pass it on to another institution and they could become a lender of last resort. But I went on a little rant there, but I think to me it's the new Bretton Woods. And so the XRP ledger is connecting all of them in a neutral way.
One thing to make everybody aware of, if you remember, the IMF was the one that put out. Did you see the virtual handbook for central banks on CBDCs?
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
they were basically explaining to I guess it was like almost 100 nations how to build their own digital currencies.
Well, do you know who else has a handbook? Ripple.
Exactly.
Ripple's the
Specific.
only.
Well, and the interesting point is the IMF specifically highlighted the need for interoperability in that same handbooks for
Yeah,
cross country. So it seemed as though, even though they were talking about interledger protocol, it seems as though they were really talking about the potential of what XRP would play in this role. I'm
yeah, absolutely.
curious if you look at the unified ledger concept around what's going on around, the Bank for International Settlements, especially if they're pushing for a unified ledger digital environment right now around central bank money, which is really where we're heading. And it's much like Carl Schwab says with the World Economic Forum is that if this reset does start to happen, because the thing and the reason I played that clip in the beginning, there's going to be a catalyst. Everybody thinks it's going to be a black swan. And if there is anything close to a catalyst right now, it is what's happening in Iran. So whether that's good, bad, or we see this prolonged into a much longer ground war, or even if we get out of this and there's lingering effects on energy price, which of course we know what that correlates to in terms of inflation, that starts to trick things up. And who are the big countries that are affected? It's mostly the EU and China. So this gets very intriguing as it starts to roll into a potential ultimate goal, which really I think is now an IMF standard that would make this pretty much the new capital inflows in real time, all focused around maybe new money. What do you think would be the next step if all of this does happen and this is the black swan event that we've talked about?
Yeah, see, for me, yeah, I agree. Like, because they always use event to bring us where they want to bring us.
Exactly.
Sometimes they create them. Sometimes they just take advantage of natural events, but usually they create them. If you look at 2020, we had a global debt crisis. All they did is they
Mhm.
kicked the can down the road. So,
Yep.
in my opinion, we're kind of already there. Now, they we had a global debt crisis. What did they do? They printed more debt, lowered interest rate, so they just created more debt. That's what they did essentially in 2009. And then in 2020, I think they were losing control. They needed an excuse to print a lot of money, like a lot of it, without raising their hands in the air saying, we screwed up. It's a Ponzi scheme. We print money out of thin air. The people pay for the taxes to pay the debt. Like it's a big Ponzi scheme, right? So instead of doing
Yep.
that, saying, we messed up, this is the Ponzi scheme, they needed an excuse to print more money. And then we had that event in 2020. And they blamed it on that event being the reason for the economic crisis. So I think they can't kick the can down the road again there, maybe until they're ready. And then now, this, like you said, this could be the event that they'll use to say, okay, you know what, like global. I don't know if they're gonna basically pay off some of the debts because it's a global debt crisis, in my understanding. Like
Yeah.
it's a global liquidity crisis, but a global debt crisis at the same time. So I
Well,
don't know.
okay, so I'm just kind of pausing something here, positing something to you in sense, if the petrodollar is being attacked here, and we know that the IMF has already started to kind of put together this financial inclusion model, which is bringing a lot of the unbanked regions into the digital grid. That because that's mostly what stablecoins have been really designed to do. But if you look at monetary sovereignty, where it would give smaller nations now that don't have to rely on the US dollar if they're utilizing an alternative system, would that I mean, this would seem like it would be like the two things I think of is RLUSD and XRP, which would be aligned in terms of the tools, and the IMF would essentially have the hooks in all these countries potentially to deal with this capital flow management coming. Am I crazy here, or do you think that's got a possibility?
No, no, you're 100% right. It's I think the US is working along with Ripple, Ripple being still that supplementary reserve asset, but taking more a role of a global reserve currency now, like the main one. And somehow the US winding down maybe a bit, the US dollar somehow,
Yeah.
because Trump in 2017, I think it was, or maybe 2020, he said, you know, I talked to, I think it was China. He said, we're going to be on a level playing field because he was talking about the currency devaluations. And then he said, soon enough, maybe sooner than most people realize, we're going to be in a level playing field. And to
Right.
me, that's the XRP ledger. I've actually done a bunch of videos on that. And because he said that's the only way that you can compete and trade fairly. Because if everybody's forced to hold the US dollar, and then, imagine you're in the Philippines and you have literally a debt in US dollar because you do your trade in US dollar, and then the US dollar becomes stronger against your currency, you can never pay that debt. Like it's just all sorts of imbalances. So I think the US dollar has to see, that's where I'm confused because when they originally started planning this, they didn't have Trump. Trump was not, they didn't plan Trump to be here in office,
Interesting.
right? So I
Uh,
don't know like how this plays out, but I know, so in theory, I think the US dollar should the petro US dollar should diminish in theory.
well, I think that's what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to
Yeah,
break it. And
that
if
would
you
make
look
sense.
at
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at what Iran is even doing, where they're taking these bounties on these ships going through the strait, and guess what they're doing it in? They're taking it in crypto, primarily stablecoin, which essentially is backing the US Treasury because that's your stable coins out there, unless it's gold, whether you buy Tether or you buy, USDC or others out there, RLUSD, that all are backing into the Treasury side. When you look at, okay, so move forward a minute into, because I think where the IMF is heading is to where they won't even use the term crypto anymore very soon. And it'll all be tokenization, will be the new theme. So if you look at asset tokenization and what we're dealing with right now, the projection here is, I think, what is it, 19 trillion by 2033. How would XRP become one of the key products, or I should say, elements within this when you look at real world assets and how this all plays into a global infrastructure? Where does this break down?
Okay. Yeah, I want to add one thing too, and it's gonna go into this question that you asked. Is first of all, the unified ledger, the shared ledger, the regulated liability network, which used to be called the regulated internet value. These are all different words that the BIS, which you mentioned, the Bank for International Settlements,
Yep.
and the central banks. These are all different terminologies they use for the XRP ledger. I've proven that this is the XRP ledger.
Well, what I'm saying is when you look at the tokenization
Oh
and
yes,
what's happening, part
yes.
of the
Sorry.
Genius Act was that tokenization would still allow fractional ownership. So we're not getting away from fractional reserve banking. It still means they could take a tokenized asset and lend it out 10 times. So if you, instead of needing 1 million to buy an investment property, you just need, 10,000 could buy $1,000 in tokens representing, their shares. Then you're applying 24/7 liquidity to all of this. I'm just wondering when this start
Sorry. Yeah.
okay, so when this
Yeah.
happens, how does XRP, RLUSD start to play into this other than just, international settlement?
Yeah, so I think like once you start tokenizing everything, you really start creating more silos. So if you have now tokenized real estate, tokenized bonds, tokenized,
Okay.
these are things that we're now putting. So tokenization is simply the representation of ownership on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So once you start tokenizing everything, I think you need a bridge asset even more because now you have more silos. So because now you need something to bridge. If somebody eventually maybe they want to sell real estate, tokenized real estate in Hong Kong, and the person is in, they're holding peso and they want to buy, the XRP ledger will allow them to go from literally tokenized real estate, this specific real estate, this building
Exactly.
specifically, possibly right to the peso or euro or whatever currency the buyer wants, the seller wants,
Are
the
you
buyer
at
wants to
all
give. I mean,
yeah, are you at all concerned about this MPT standard that they're talking about right now, which is Ripple launched the MPT standard, which would basically be a specialized template for banks to create tokens, and it would have compliance hooks that basically are built-in rules for that token that would be sent to someone. But the key is someone who hasn't passed a KYC. So it's got a clawback feature within it. So if the token is stolen, here's my question. Is Ripple the good guy or the bad guy here? I'm trying to figure out where they land.
I was, because of my opinion with the IMF, I have to be careful here.
Yeah.
But like I always thought, like I always told people, like, listen, Ripple's not your friend. Okay. I know that, we think they're working for us, and Ripple's not necessarily a friend. Their their goal is to help the central bankers, like to fix this global liquidity crisis and so on. So that's kind of where I always stood. Now, I do feel that we do need a neutral bridge currency. There is a lot of good that will come out of that. I'm not saying that Ripple's team is not good people, but they're like, I don't want to be, in my opinion, like they're not doing this for us. Okay, like this is not about the
Right.
people. Okay, so we're not their bosses. And I know they look like just a private company that's just trying to help with cross border and serve a big, fix a big problem using blockchain, but that's not the case. This has been planned for like 35 years.
Yeah.
And again, it has to do with the Bretton Woods and all these things. So, but they're good people, but the people behind them, like the IMF, if you listen, if you study what the IMF is really about, again, I have to be really careful here.
They have some different agendas.
Yeah, yeah, very different agendas, and I think for definitely like for the what the control, like every central bank that's building on the XRP ledger, because my understanding is the main hook here is whoever issues, like the XRP ledger cannot, like they cannot freeze XRP. Like there are some of these amendments and some of these features that we're seeing on the XRP ledger that is more for whoever's the issuer. So if you're issuing
The
a token, issuing a CBDC, the issuer can do the clawback based on those things, based on, oh, okay, he doesn't have KYC, clawback or something like that. But the thing that you just explained here, I haven't studied that enough, Paul, to know. But I know that individually, the issuers are the ones that are holding a lot of the control for
It
sure.
is it's the MPT standard. It's the multi-purpose token standard that Ripple published. And it was late last year. They launched it. It was primarily designed for banks, for compliance. And I think this is the thing that banks, of course, want for them to be able to go into tokenized assets. But it does play, it puts Ripple and XRP's role in as a universal connector. So, because if everything's tokenized, real estate is on ledger A, you got gold here on ledger B, dollars on ledger C, they have to talk to each other. That's where XRP
Yeah,
comes in.
yeah,
That's the way I understand it.
yeah.
So, as a neutral reserve asset, all of this is kind of connecting these silos out there. And Ripple is at the core of this.
Oh,
So, if
absolutely.
they've built in a clawback mechanism into this MPT standard, that's what concerns me a little
Well,
bit.
yeah, but I think the clawback, that clawback applies to anybody that's going to issue tokens, whether stable coins.
Which would be the banks.
Yeah, would be the
Yeah,
banks. They're
would be
keeping
them.
that feature, but again, which causes the issue of control,
Yeah.
right? Because we can't digitize everything and not not have that issue of control. Like to
Right,
me, that's
right.
part of the goal as well, control, right? Like the World Economic Forum saying you'll own nothing and be happy.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
like who are they to say we're not going to own anything? Like it stands against their agenda, stands against everything that us as free people should, as, not to get religious, but
Yep.
for me, I believe in a God, like our free will, our free, God given rights. It stands against all of that. Like whether we believe in God or not, like these people, the World Economic Forum, like, whew, You'll own nothing and be happy. Like, who are you to say I can't own anything? Can't own land. I can't. It's the deprivatization of everything. So
Well, this gets into the power of DeFi collateral, which I think is this is eventually, I think, gonna be a huge battle between traditional, and we haven't seen this before because, you have the cash society out there right now that we've grown over the last 30, 40 years. And then you have the digital society that I think for most people watching or listening to this podcast, they probably don't pay for much in cash anymore. When's the last time you gave cash except maybe to
oh
your,
my goodness, yeah,
it's
it's
hard to
yeah.
transact in it.
So,
So, that's the thing that I think I'm more concerned about because if we're moving everything to tokenized, you've got Ondo, which has brought US Treasuries now to XRPL. You've got where investors now can start to go into RLUSD stablecoin. You've got carbon marketplaces playing into this. You've got DeFi collateral now where you're going to get tokenized gold, which if you've been watching the gold market, I was talking to Andy Schechner about this, is that most of the gold traffic has been paper. So it's like XAUT, Paxos, etc.
mm,
That's the kind of thing a little bit more concerned. But when you look at the internet of value, and this is the WEF, they actually called it that, the internet of value. If you look at a 24-month outlook by 2028, consider everything that's happening in Iran, consider everything that's happening already globally. Stablecoins getting ready to go through. Clarity Act apparently this morning is telling us that we might get that. Where does this stand on a true reset? Is it happening? You think it'll happen by 28?
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like 28, 29, because I would naturally say I would say 28, but I've been wrong for so long. Like it keeps kind of it's always longer than what I thought. But something's got to give here. Like
Yeah.
something's got to give. It's a very big deal, Paul. It's all coming to this right now, right?
Yeah.
We have a debt crisis. This is huge. Like they're printing debt just to pay the interest on the debt. Like I mean, this is
Well, that's
inflation.
why I think you have to break the petrodollar. And, when you look at what's happening in Europe, this potentially could easily do it. The Black Swan guys did a post. Do you follow the Black
Oh yeah,
Swan
yeah.
guys?
I was on their show a few times. Yeah, they're awesome.
Let me play a clip for you guys. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick because this was a good one that I can bring up real quick. Here it is right here. Let's do this. All right, here we go. So here was, I think this was Rasan. Yeah, he said, 22, I spoke about central bank digital currencies we're heading. Today, it's no longer a theory, it's unfolding. This isn't just about digital money, it's about access, control, and financial freedom could change in ways most people aren't prepared for. This is the clip he played, but it's the latter section of it I want you to listen to.
Is a big issue. It's a big issue for any sort of
This is liquidity.
financial markets, and the deeper liquidity pools across the world, the more seamless that we can move that value. Custody, very important. Settlements, lending products as well. I mean, it really runs the gamut. And again, we are looking at and studying all, but we're very focused on moving value right now, and we think the liquidity piece is core to all of this. We have seen full circle in that these financial institutions now are the ones that are interested, driving, taking their own initiatives, looking for advice, and certainly a big part of this movement. And if you think about, even as we'll talk about the agenda over the couple of days here, the financial institutions are very much a part of this agenda.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's dive in a little bit deeper. The World Economic Forum and International Monetary Fund has been pushing for central bank digital currencies. The key difference with a central bank digital currency is that central banks will have absolute control on rules and regulations that will determine the use of the central bank liability. In other words, what you can spend the money on.
But ultimately, it will run off the blockchain. There's no question about it. Paper money is going to go away. And systems like SWIFT will likely get hacked in an adversarial, asymmetric war game scenario, likely. And so you're going to have to back into blockchain. You're going to have to back into it in a way that not only provides the stability of the distribution and the liquidity of the asset, but also in the actual backing of it.
Boom. All right. So he made a big statement there. Let me stop sharing that real quick. He made a big statement there that I thought was a little stark. Swift gets hacked. And And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wait a minute. Okay, you look at everybody trying to shift over to digital currency. I think Iran has already started to maybe show the hand of how some countries and nation states are going to do business very soon. El Salvador has done this with Bitcoin. Now you've got Iran most likely going to go digital currency very quickly because they've already started to flow into the digital yuan stablecoin. And now we're dealing with potential countries in the EU that could be facing those kind of cataclysmic issues around Swift in terms of moving assets, which goes back to my point. Deplete the petrodollar, reset how the globe works, frame it under a stablecoin guise, Genius Act, and then build the infrastructure that maybe rises two or three currencies, whether that's gold, the digital yuan, and the new digital dollar into the future. That's the thing that I'm watching. And of course, one of the biggest things I was most concerned about is what Versan was saying is control.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little crazy. So, do you feel that we're way out there on this, or do you feel it's much closer? True digital control.
Yeah, so I think the infrastructure itself, they've been like I said, I think it's laid down. That's the XRP ledger and the interledger protocol. That's been started laying that down a long time ago.
Yeah.
The whole digital control, the way I love Verson, I don't see it exactly like he does. Like for example, I do agree with the type of control they're gonna have, and I do believe that that's the main goal eventually. But I don't think it's gonna happen tomorrow. I mean, this could
Okay.
be 30, 50, this could be 50, 100, maybe 200 years before, because it's gonna be individual
Wow.
countries. Well, no, but I mean, it depends how bad, right? Depends what we're talking about here. Like everybody getting a chip
Well, if
in the
you see a
hand.
petrodollar get redistributed, I mean, if it truly gets to the point where we are printing, I mean, listen, the nothing, as Lynn Alden says, nothing stops this train. We are going to have to default on this debt. And I say we, the United States is going to have to default on this debt at some point. The math just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, no,
So at
no.
some point, you're going to have this convert possibly within our lifetime, maybe within the decade
Oh
here
yeah.
before 2030.
Yeah, what I meant, Paul, is when I said 50 years, 100 years, I'm talking about the total, like the control where the government says you can't buy
I
this and this,
see.
where
Okay.
all
You
governments are
don't
the
think
major.
that it could just shock the society and stick them with, hey, much like what digital yuan, what did that take? 3 years to implement across the Chinese ecosystem?
Yeah, but I still kind of see, like, I do believe there's going to be a one world government at one point. As a Christian, it's again not to be religious, but it is my conviction that we're going to have a one world government, one way or another, and it's going to be not good. Where all countries majority of countries are going to participate with this
Right.
dark plan. But I think that for now, though, each country has its own. Like, it's not like every single country is going to start treating their citizens in a totalitarian manner overnight, right? Which is kind of like, so to me, it's
So
like
you
it's
think
still individual countries. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's the boiling the frog model.
yeah,
You just keep turning up the heat a little bit till they don't realize it, and then
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
But
20,
but
30 years
but
from now.
some countries are turning up the heat faster than others, right? Like if you
Yeah.
look at, you compare. Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's not like every country literally overnight starts saying to their citizens, you can't, because not all presidents and not all countries are the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yes, it is. I agree with them with where this can bring us. If you have, if everything's on the blockchain and you have an evil government, which there's a lot of them right now, it's not good, right? It's like, so because for example, it's again, oh, like you traveled a bit too much and you didn't watch your carbon footprint, so you're not going to get your
Yeah.
monthly payment for your elderly payment, but it can eventually get there, and I agree with him that way, but not tomorrow morning.
Jesse, what do you think is the thing our viewers and listeners should be watching right now, other than, dollar cost averaging into, the core tokens, whether you like HBAR or XRP, you like Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it might be that kind of, you think is your hedge. Some people still going into physical gold. I still like digital gold and tokenized gold. What do you think is the thing that we should be practicing right now to kind of prep for this?
I've been saying XRP for 8 years. I just don't know when it's going to go to the moon, because XRP for sure, it's an infrastructure play. I'm big on QND. I've been screaming screaming top of my lungs here
For
for
quant, yeah.
quant. Like people, I would love to do an hour segment with you just on quant. I've always it's always been a utility play for me. I've been focused on utility tokens, and I didn't focus on silver and gold,
Yeah.
which I probably should have with what we saw with silver, because I thought we were going to see the effect of utility in the price. I thought we were going to see
Mm.
that effect way like a long time ago, right?
Much
Because
earlier.
yeah,
Yeah.
because this is infrastructure, right? This is not just a stock. This is not moving based on speculation. This is literally a
I think
token.
that it all boils down to clarity.
Yeah.
Once clarity comes through, then you have the green light for a lot of these infrastructure plays and the banks that would move quickly. And I also think that Ripple is on the verge of launching some major products that they can't get launched without clarity. Once the clarity, which I think is why Brad is such a provocateur around getting clarity passed, because many people look at it and say, he's playing both sides over here. He's not on the side of yield, and that's us. I keep hearing, listen, our research team believes that there might be a civil war in XRP holders and Ripple. Do you think that can happen?
They meaning, do you think that they can? So just a fight, or do you think they can claw it back? They can't claw it back. That's
Well,
for
no, no,
sure.
not claw it back, but I mean in the essence
Oh
of,
yeah,
the XRP army
yeah,
finally or looks at it in a sense of, uh-oh, Ripple might be on the other side of
yeah. I
this.
understood. I
You
understand
know,
now. Yeah, yeah. It's possible. But to me, like that's where I get confused too, Paul. I'm like, okay, are they a bit of a good guys? Are they like 50-50? I know they're
yeah.
working for central banks, and I know this has been planned for many years, and they just positioned themselves as a private company. That I know for sure. But that's why I can't say. That's why I always say like Ripple's not your friend. However, it's that's where it gets confusing, Paul, because you like
It's a much tougher
they're playing
alignment.
their cards so well. Yeah, they're playing their cards
Yeah.
so well. I yeah, I
It's
don't
an
know.
interesting, yeah, it's an interesting position. It may never happen, but it's very possible because what I look at is once clarity happens, we will know quickly because the acceleration, only because of the amount of banks that will be racing to come into this market so fast, it may force the hand on a lot of these companies.
Well, this is what really confusing me, Paul. So I know this has been planned for years by the powers that be. I know the majority of the administrations prior to Trump were working for
Yeah.
the powers that be. They were literally selected, okay,
Mhm.
by the powers that be. Now Trump is there, and we see still Ripple working closely with Trump, although he has a completely different idea for America and the world than the previous administration has. So that's where I'm so confused. Ripple is the agenda, s- and for the people that literally put the previous presidents in power. But now
Yeah.
we have someone that literally had the money to finance his own campaign. He's there, but we still see Ripple working with him.
It's
That's what
crazy.
really confuses me. But I think it comes back down to the fact that the US needs a neutral bridge currency. They
Yeah,
need a neutral bridge currency to exist as well because they can't keep running trade deficits,
exactly,
which is the
exactly. Which
Triffin
I think
dilemma.
that's the thing I think is the core cornerstone of how this all comes together. Listen, I know this is a deep conversation for you guys today, and a lot of times when Jesse and I get into this, it's we leave with more questions than answers. So and that usually is the case with any of the good podcasts. So we are
It's
going to
okay. It
bring this
forces them.
topic
Sorry.
back. We're going to
It
bring
for-
this topic back for sure because I know
Sorry to
everybody's
cut
like,
you off, Paul. We're just saying it forces them to come back if we leave with
yeah,
questions.
we're gonna bring it back. I know many of you are, listen, I get asked these questions all the time in my DMs. I'm watching this, I'm seeing this. We're looking at the different kind of components that are happening globally. Now we have what's going on with Iran. I think everybody's just wondering just how quickly. I still think the Clarity Act is the trigger that may start this domino
Oh,
process to
yes, I
move.
agree, Paul. And we need that. Listen, if they don't pass that before the midterms, it is not good for America,
That
in
is
my opinion.
bad. Yeah,
Very
bad for
bad.
Bob.
Yeah.
Very bad. Well, listen, we're going to cover that and more. You guys know what to do. Check out Jesse, Apex Crypto Insights. You can find him over on YouTube. And Jesse, thanks so much for stopping in today. I appreciate it.
Paul, it's always an honor to be on your show, man. I love talking to you so much. Thank you.